we are going to call this committee to order. Apologies for those who have had to wait. We're all busy right now, running from committee to committee and other obligations and the like, so we're just a little bit off step here. So this is the Minnesota Senate Transportation Committee hearing of Wednesday, February 21st, 2024. The time is about 10 minutes after 3 o'clock, and we are in room 1100 of the Minnesota Senate building. A quorum is present. Members, we have 5 bills on the agenda. 3 of them are on a similar topic. The first one is on a topic we see often, and we'll have a few more of those coming down the pike a little later, having to do with special permits, waiving weight restrictions. Members, my intention is to lay all these bills on the table. I don't know if they'll travel ultimately as standalone bills or be packaged into a larger omnibus policy bill. Haven't figured all that out. I'll seek advice and counsel from Senator Jasinski on that question as we move down the pike here towards deadlines and figure out how we should handle the many, many policy bills that we're going to be hearing in the next couple of weeks. And I hope that's satisfactory to Senator Johnson. I don't know if you intended to move the weight bill, but we got a number of the weight bills. We want to consider them all as a package and figure out how to proceed. With that, Senator Johnson, why don't you make your way to the table? And as you make your way up, I will wish you happy Sugar Beet Day. I understand there's other bills being heard in other committees that have to do with the sugar industry in Minnesota. And we're happy to accommodate you as sugar beet representatives are here at the Capitol today. Welcome to the committee, Senator Johnson. I see we have another fine former member of the Senate joining you at the table. Senate File 3549. Please proceed as you wish.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Yes, indeed, today is Sugar Beet Day at the Capitol. We have a few of our producers and growers here today sitting over there who are big proponents of sugar beet and the industry and what it does for the economy of Minnesota. And for you, Mr. Chair, you might be interested to know I've got a book that has Minnesota economics in it of 1915. And the actual #1 sugar beet producing county in the state was Hennepin County at the time. And so it's traveled a little bit up north, but still you have some heritage right in Hennepin County. Today we're going to talk a little bit about a need that we have up in East Grand Forks in the area to help out the industry. And that deals with Senate File 3549, which is a bill that helps to alleviate some of the trucking issues that we have when we deal with commerce between North Dakota and Minnesota and how they move those sugar beets. Before we get into the bill, though, Mr. Chair and members, I do have the A1 amendment, if we can put that forward here.
Thank you, Senator Johnson. Senator Jasinski, would you like to move the A1 amendment?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move the A1.
All right, Senator Jasinski moves the A1 amendment. This is the committee of origin and the first amendment to 3549. So as such, it's an author's amendment. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. Motion carries. Senator Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With the bill in order, I would like to move my comments over to former Senator Moe and have you talk about what the bill does and the issue we have.
So former Senator Moe, who hails from the Red River Valley himself, Sugar Beet Central. All right, Senator Moe.
Chair Dibble, members of the Transportation Committee, my name is Roger Moe, and I'm here on behalf of American Crystal Sugar Company. I do their government relations work here in Minnesota. As Senator Johnson has indicated, they have an issue in a very precise location. We're here to talk about less than 2.5 miles of road from the Minnesota-North Dakota boundaries to the East Grand Forks processing plant. Just a little bit about the sugar industry, since that's a big deal up where we come from. The Red River Valley is the largest sugar beet producer in the U.S. They process a lot of beets and have been quite successful. They have 5 plants up and down the valley and 111 piling stations, which is what this relates to. The harvest generally starts about mid-August, and they they pull enough beets just to start the plants and to run them. And fortunately, one of the advantages of that part of the state is that it's usually cold, with the exception of this year, and cold, freezing weather has been good for this particular crop because it preserves the beet. They can get this harvest done in less than 2 weeks if the weather's good, but sometimes it'll drag on for a couple of months. They have 10,000 harvest employees, 1,600 that are just at these piling stations. They try to target about 12 million tons of beets in the crop size. So, as Senator Johnson indicated, about half of the beets processed at the East Grand Forks plant are basically from North Dakota. And there are 5 piling stations that are in that zone where they truck from the piling stations to the plant in East Grand Forks. And you can imagine the truck hauling that goes through the city of East Grand Forks. It's considerable, and what they'd like to do is to request, this permit would request a little bit different size of a truck trailer size. It would haul 122,000 pounds, and so it would need a special permit. I believe there are a couple of other exemptions like this. There's one actually in our neighborhood north of East Grand Forks, just south of the city of Hallock. There's a canola processing plant, and they have an exemption in law for a few miles because of trucks that come in from Canada. So what we're requesting is, I think you have a map of the 2.5 miles in East Grand Forks. There's about 1 mile that will travel on US Highway 2 to, is it Fifth? Is it Fifth Avenue, and go south on Fifth Avenue for about 1 mile, and then back on Old US 2 to the plant. And it would be significant for the city because they projected it would be about a 30% reduction in trucks for those routes that go into East Grand Forks. That's quite significant, and as well as with 11 axles, they're more braking capacity. It would be that they have a difficult time getting drivers sometimes, and so this would have reduce some of the pressure for getting the truck drivers, as well as a reduction in the number of fewer loads equate to a 20% reduction in the greenhouse gases on that particular route. So, we have presented a resolution in support from the city of East Grand Forks, as well as a resolution in support from the county, Polk County, where the plant is located. Mr. Chairman, I would yield for any questions.
Thank you, Senator Moe, Senator Johnson. Members, any questions at this point before we proceed to other testifiers? Senator Jasinski. Looked like you were getting ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to say that thanks to Senator Johnson and Senator Lang, I've had a chance to tour everything up there and really understand the magnitude of what that happens up there in that part of the state. So thanks for bringing this bill forward, and whatever we can do to continue that. It's just a great economic engine up there. And again, thanks to Senator Johnson and Senator Lang for inviting me up to tour that facility, one of those facilities. I don't remember which one. Senator Lang probably remembers, but it was a great day to see how that operates up there. So thank you.
Yeah, it's the only, Mr. Chair,
Senator Lang.
it's the only facility you can tour and lick the bottom of your shoes afterwards, and they taste good. So it's, but yeah, and you know, Senator Jasinski, thanks for the help. You know, how many sugar beets do you have in your district?
0.
Okay, just checking. No, I think it's a good bill. I guess it does, Mr. Chair, raise the question at what point in time, this is maybe to Senator Johnson or Senator Moe, If you look at the diagram that you did provide, it looks like it's probably less weight overall than what 2 trucks actually are without the other tractor. Now, I guess the question to me is, at what point in time, 122,000 pounds is nothing to scoff at. If we go further down this line when it comes to I think the term they call it is training trucks together. How far do we go, or at what point in time are the roads not capable of handling that? And I don't know if that's a question for you or
Sure.
MnDOT, but that's the one that pops up in my mind as we go forward with these weights and providing restrictions and some deviations of those restrictions. So that's the only thing I was thinking about.
Thanks. Was that a question or an observation in the form of a question? Senator Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Senator Lang. If you do read through the packet here too, you'll see in some of the notes that these trailer configurations actually do reduce the weight on the axles themselves. So you have the tractor, but then you have more axles, less weight on the roads themselves, which actually improves the conditions on the roads because you're spreading that out over a further period or a further distance, and the PSI is much less on that as well.
Great, thank you. I will call forward Kyle Makarios from the Teamsters. Welcome to the committee. Please introduce yourself and proceed.
Thank you, Chair Dibble, committee members. My name is Kyle Makarios, and I represent the Teamsters Joint Council 32. Despite our deep respect for both of the esteemed gentlemen to my left, the Teamsters are opposed to Senate File 3549. Teamsters Joint Council 32 represents 75,000 active and retired workers in our region, and a very large percentage of those members drive trucks every day. Nothing is more important to us than the safety of truck drivers and the safety of others who share the roads with them. That is why we've consistently opposed special truck weight carve-outs like this one. We know that heavier trucks on Minnesota roads pose a safety threat to those driving them and to all of us who drive next to them. Heavier trucks are involved in more deadly crashes, they have higher out-of-service rates and brake violations, and they cause more wear and tear on our already stressed road infrastructure. It is worth pointing out that this particular bill would be an especially large exemption from the 80,000-pound standard for trucks in Minnesota, setting a dangerous precedent for trucks fully 50% heavier than most are allowed to be. It is also worth pointing out a Minnesota Public Radio story from last November that I have not sent to you all, but I will share with the committee as soon as I am done. That story, reported by NPR, reported that North Dakota sugar beet growers from the MnDOT cooperative were actively testing autonomous trucks during last fall's harvest. Fortunately, they aren't allowed on this side of the border, but I think it's fair to ask this committee, if we grant this exemption to allow trucks to go to 122,000 pounds, how long do you think it will be before the industry is asking you to allow autonomous 122,000 pound trucks to drive through our cities? That's all I have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Makarios. Questions, members? All right. So we'll, Senator Johnson, do you have any further testifiers?
We do not have any further testifiers on this bill, but I would like to mention too, this will result in 4,600 fewer trips across that section of road by trucks, making it safer. That is also one of the main routes that a lot of the families use to go to the one grocery store in town. And so by having less conflict between trucks and our civilian traffic over there, I think is a huge safety impact. Plus, we talked a little about braking issues too. These trucks are much safer in that respect as well, because the braking power is much better when you have that many more axles on this as well. So although a great respect and deference to the Teamsters, I think most of those facts can be refuted.
Thank you. All right. As I understand, Senator Johnson, the A1 was developed in conversation with other stakeholders, advisors, experts, the Department of Transportation and the like. Is that true?
Yes.
Senator Moe.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, yes, that's correct.
Great. And if I'm not mistaken, it moved MnDOT from tilting in opposition to neutral on the subject. I'll just look for MnDOT to acknowledge that. We hadn't heard back from the Association of Minnesota Counties. We had invited them. They usually, in representing the county engineers, have some opinions on these overweight proposals, and they had not responded to us. I'll just mention that as well. Would anyone else like to testify on Senate File 3549, who hasn't had the opportunity or hadn't notified us beforehand? Okay, with that, members, we will lay 3549 as amended on the table for future consideration. Thank you, Senator Johnson.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to jump ahead. Senator Farnsworth, to your bill, Senate File 3881. Senator Westlin is otherwise detained in Judiciary Committee. And you never know when people will emerge from Judiciary. I hear they've got 8 amendments to go, so it'll be a while. So welcome to the committee, Senator Farnsworth, on Senate File 3881 to designate part of U.S. Highway 169, the Cross Range Expressway, the David J. Tomasoni Memorial Cross Range Expressway. Please proceed as you will.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before I begin my comments, I would like to offer, or I have an author's amendment, the A1.
So we'll have Senator Lang offer the A1 amendment, which is a delete everything amendment. This is the Committee of Origin and the first. Delete everything after. Sorry, it's not a delete everything amendment. It's just a regular amendment. So anyway, so Senator Lang moves the A1 amendment. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. Motion carries. All right. Senator Farnsworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just to explain what that amendment does, after consulting the Department of Transportation, they prefer to have specific locations for these memorial highways, and so it just adds cross streets so that they know where to put the signs in the exact locations.
Great.
Senator Tomasoni meant a great deal to communities across the Iron Range, and I'd like to talk a lot about that, but I have 2 testifiers that will be able to explain that. Instead, I'd like to explain the idea of the Cross Range Expressway before the testifiers speak. Decades ago, a plan was identified to turn the 2-lane section of Highway 169 between Grand Rapids and Virginia into a 4-lane highway. The idea was twofold. 1, it would create a safer corridor for people to travel, and 2, it would better connect the west and east ends of the Iron Range. For the last 30 years, Senator Tomasoni, during his time in the other body and more recently during his time in the current body, worked to complete this dream, and he would complete it. He was able to get funds about 5 to 10 miles at a time. Most recently, they were able to do a section that runs through the city of Taconite, and that was completed. As of now, there's about 8 miles left on that section to be completed. This progress would not have happened without the determination of Senator Tomasoni. And to tell you more about what David meant to our area, I have his son Dante, I believe on Zoom, and his good friend Gary Sirkvenik. So with your permission, Mr. Chair, could we have Dante give his Zoom testimony?
Yes, we can. I think that is being worked on. All right.
Can you hear me?
All right. Welcome to the committee, Mr. Tomasoni. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, committee members. I simply want to express what a huge honor this is for our family. I want to thank Senator Farnsworth for bringing forth the bill and the other authors of this bill who were not only my father's colleagues, but his friends, Senators Diedzek, Jasinski, and Hoffman. I want to express our deep gratitude on behalf of the Tomasoni family and my late father. My father, who most of you knew very well, had a passion for the economic vitality of his district. He knew that supporting economic activity was vital to supporting his constituents. Transportation, this highway was an essential component for commerce, safety, and the quality of life on the Iron Range. It transported goods, critical mineral infrastructure, and families. As a father of 3 small kids, the newest being just 2 weeks old, I often hear the not so subtle gasp of my wife every time I pass a car on a 2-lane highway. And it reminds me how important expansion to the 4-lane is for safety, for families, and for quality of life on the range, and also, very importantly, for efficient transportation of commerce. Keep people working, keep them safe, take care of families and others were the strongest values of my father, and this highway was an important part of his career. So again, I want to thank you members, Mr. Chair, and authors. We're honored and grateful for this bill. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Tomasoni. Great to see you. Mr. Sirkvenik.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Gary Sirkvenik, and it's a great honor to be here on behalf of my friend, David Tomasoni, and to explain why I think, and I think most Iron Rangers think, we should honor him. He had a reputation for being a friend of everyone, enemy of none, and he's the type of person who made the Senate, I think you would all agree, a better place to work, and a better place to enjoy life in. What were his traits? He didn't have an ego. He was not self-centered. That was the key to his happiness, I think. He had a sense of humor about his own importance. And also, his pedestal was not up high, but firmly on the ground. And I think that's what you would all remember him as. He had a saying in Italian, andrò tutto bene, which was, everything is going to be all right. It was an optimistic attitude that all Italians share, and one that was really how he based his interactions with most people and his vision for the future. Why was he an effective legislator? I've got a list a mile long of all the things he accomplished, which I know you are well familiar with, and I won't go through in great detail, but some. I want to listen to his own words, what he said about his constituents. When you called, I tried to be there to help. And he said, I learned to treat people with respect and learned the power of goodwill. I've learned to listen because the best ideas come from the people. And then there was always the practical Tomasoni. Compromise and respect goes a long way to get things done. Laura Bach, his assistant, also noted, you can't imagine coming to work for somebody who's happy every day. It's a blessing to work with someone so upbeat. David knew about the privileges of the office of the Senate, and it gave rise to obligations as well. He said, you need to live and act and vote to make government work for everyone who struggles. And he said, when you called, I tried to be there. That's a pretty good message. And I think one thing I'd like to note, for those who know Tomasoni very well, that who would believe that he was the famous as the chief author creating the University of Minnesota's Wine and Grape Institute. As you know, he was a qualified taster. He was also a very famous hockey player. And so just to remind you, we brought this beautiful jersey of Tomasoni, Italia, and number 30. He was in the 1984 Olympics. He was in 4 World Hockey Championships, Defenseman of the Year in 1982. So he certainly deserves a highway to be named after him, especially because he was the defenseman of the Iron Range. So I'd like to end with this quote from the Greek poet Homer about my friend David. Who among mortal men are you, good friend, since never before have I seen you in the fighting where men win glory, yet now you have come striding far out in front of all others in your great heart. So with that, Mr. Chairman, thank you for hearing the bill, and we look forward to its passage.
Thank you, Mr. Sirkvenik. Members, Senator Jasinski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll try and get through this with a straight face and not cry, but I met Senator Tomasoni my first year in the Senate, and he's had a lasting effect on me as well as many, many, many others. I know that for a fact. It wasn't a first couple weeks into session, and he sat in front of me, and one night we decided to go and have a beverage and some dinner. And we were going to go to McGovern's, and so I came home, came back to the office, and I told Senator Lang, we're going to go out for dinner tonight with Senator Tomassoni. And he goes, with Senator Tomassoni? He's a Democrat. And I said, well, yeah. And we had a great, it wasn't that blunt, but it was, oh, really, we're going out with him? Anyway, so we went out for dinner at McGovern's, and I tell you what, we shared life experiences together and back and forth, and we said, I know Dante's listening to this because he's heard the story a few times, but after a few stories got exchanged, Senator Thomas always says, I think we can trust each other, and I think we're going to be good friends. And from that point on, David became one of my best friends in the legislature. He taught me lots of things. He taught me to listen. He taught me to work across the aisle. So many great things the way this institution should operate. Have relationship skills, discuss things. You may not always agree on policy, which David and I didn't on all, but some we did. And it's the way the legislature should work. You should work across the aisle, develop relationships so you can understand why you have different feelings on different things. So he was a mentor to me, a mentor to many, something that I think Senator Dibble and I take across as well in transportation to work together to get things done for the people of Minnesota. I cannot be more proud of my very good friend Tomassoni. I miss him dearly, as I know many of us do. And I've passed a lot of legislation on naming highways for my own constituents, but I will tell you and everybody, this is probably the most emotional and the most well-meant dedication that I could do to anybody. So this is for you, Sony, and I'll always love him and his family. And thank you for bringing this forward. It's a great, great bill, and I know we'll all vote for it. And I look forward to the day on the floor when we can pass this, and I hope it's in a standalone bill because I think this is something Senator Tomassoni deserves and that we can all help do that. So thank you, Senator Farnsworth, for bringing this forward. Thank you for bringing it to me to co-author, and look forward to moving on with that. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Senator Jasinski. Senator Herr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, when I first got to the Senate here, I was vice chair of the Economic Development Committee under Chair Tomassoni. And so I consider him his mentor, and as just said by Senator Jasinski, you know, we learn a lot from him. He's a friend of all. So I really thank Senator Farnsworth for bringing this forth, and also thank you, Mr. Smiglewski, and also Dante Tomassoni. We miss your father dearly. And so, you know, I learned a lot from him, and we can't list it all, but if I sum it all up, and that one thing that I will not forget is he always say, this is a good bill, and vote green. So, thank you.
That is a great Tomassoni quote. Senator Lang.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm glad that we're all laughing today, and I think I had to respond to that a little bit because that's exactly how that story happened. And I said, can we do that? Can we really go out with him? Is that not going to be like looked upon poorly? And it turns out it's like just one of the many lessons you learn when you come to St. Paul and really figure out what it means to be a senator and represent the citizens of your district. And he was really, really good at that. And it was an example to follow. I think, you know, you could speak to his willingness not only to work across the aisle, but to work with other people. I think that was evident when you saw that not only was a Democrat and he was an independent, I think he kind of caucused by himself for a while. It was pretty amazing to see him do things like that. And, you know, there's a few pieces of advice that he gave to me that I probably cannot repeat in this room. But I tell you what, the one thing that kicks me, I think we tried actually naming a piece of road after him while he was still with us. And he, you know, and the little evil grin on his face, like, oh, you guys, don't you dare. And now I can say sitting in this room, we're going to name a road after him. And there's nothing he can say about it. We're going to do it. But, you know, all I would ask is I'm glad that you guys brought this forward. I think it's well-deserved, and for sure that I wanted to invite to that sign placement, for sure. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. It's hard. It's really hard. I'll save my comments, most of my comments for the floor, but it's fair to say we loved David a lot, and I was proud. A lot of people don't know the D in D. Scott Dibble. I don't know if it's there. It stands for David, so I was proud to be part of the David caucus for a while. And I learned a lot from David, a lot. You know, he probably wasn't aware that he was a mentor of mine, but I just learned how to disagree without being disagreeable. I mean, we agreed on a lot, but we mixed it up on a lot of things, environmental policy and the like. And whenever we went a few rounds on the floor, he would always run over to my desk and tell me a joke or just make sure we were still good every time. And I really appreciated that. Yeah, he was a giant of the Senate, and this is a worthy recognition and remembrance. He was really, really good at getting the money and bringing it home. Gary Sirkbenek, I think, tallied up all of the legislative funds that he was able to attract to the range at his funeral, and it was impressive. So to name a piece of infrastructure after him is perfect. I love that, especially being the infrastructure nerd here in the legislature. And I am persuaded that we should probably just send this out to the floor on its own. Senator Jasinski, would you like to make that motion? First, let me ask anyone else. Any other members want to speak? Anyone from the public want to testify? Okay, Senator Jasinski.
Thank you again, Mr. Chair, and I so many great stories. I'd love to tell more, but I know we have a big agenda today, and I'll save some for on the floor as well. Unfortunately, I wish Danny could have been here today and Dante could have been in person to see the people and what the emotions do to a person when your father has that much impact on people. I know you've seen it in other spots, but it's just so great. So with that, I would move to approve Senate File 3881 and be placed on general orders.
As amended.
As amended.
All right. With that, anything further, members? All in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carries. Thank you, Senator Farnsworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. Thank you, Dante. Thank you, Gary.
Thank you, everyone.
Great. We have Senator Dahms here. Please come forward. Senator Dahms is here to present Senate File 3766, naming another memorial designation. Senator Dahms.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair and members. There is a letter in your packet if you take a look at that. But this would name the U.S. Highway 212 bridge over the Minnesota River at Granite Falls, named that the Mayor David Smiglewski Memorial Bridge. And I just wanted to pick up a few highlights of some of the things that David has done over the years. David was elected to the Granite Falls City Council at the age of 26, and that was in 1979. He was appointed as mayor in 1996, and he was in that position at his time of passing from ALS on September 22nd, 2023 at the age of 70. Mayor Smiglewski led the city of Granite Falls through several major issues, and they had two very traumatic floods during his term, also a tornado, and his guidance in the community was highly respected and had a major impact on the community and how well the community recovered. He was very involved in his community, not just as the mayor, not just in city council work, but he also worked and was very heavily involved in the local food shelf project Turnabout in the Kiwanis. And more broadly, he served on some state organizations. He served on the Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities. He was on their board. He was on the Southwest Corridor Transportation Coalition and the League of Minnesota Cities and many other things. I have a couple of testifiers today that would like to testify on behalf of the bill. So to my right is Marty Seifert.
Welcome, Representative Seifert.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's good to see you in the body here. You know, I don't testify very often. My name is Marty Seifert. I am with the Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities, but here more frankly as an individual. I approached the city of Granite Falls about this bill. Kind of shows that any regular person going to have an idea of a bill becoming a law, but they consulted with David's widow about what was most appropriate. As some of you know, the city of Granite Falls is split between Chippewa and Yellow Medicine counties, and so they thought the bridge that joined the city of Granite Falls was very emblematic. Mayor Smiglewski was in elective office for 44 years up until his time of death. Actually died in Washington DC representing the Transportation Coalition, and how appropriate that is for this bill. Senator Dahms mentioned so many things. When I represented Yellow Medicine County in the legislature, I worked with David a lot. Much like Senator Tomassoni, worked across the aisle, nonpartisan, bipartisan way. I wore my purple Minnesota tie today to reflect that. And I guess I will wrap it up by just saying that Dave Smiglewski was a very genuine person in an increasingly disingenuous world. And I think he deserves this. I hope it can be a standalone bill, and I appreciate the committee's support.
And Mr. Chairman, we also have Randy Malushnik to testify.
Welcome, Commissioner.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and members. I'm Randy Maluchnik. I'm here today as president of the Southwest Corridor Transportation Coalition. I knew and worked with the mayor, Smiglewski, Dave, first as a congressional staffer with Congressman Mingy's office, and later as an elected official. His dedication is, in my personal opinion, has not been matched for working so hard on Highway 212 and other projects to make them safe for the traveling public. He drove for many years to Carver County and other places in the state from Grand Forks to attend our meetings and events in all kinds of weather. And when he's driving on road, or State Highway 212, he knew that it was not as safe as it should have been at that time. We were having dinner the night that he became ill and was hospitalized, which led to his final days with us here on Earth. And that day, he spent the entire day on the Hill with me and others, and put the miles on the feet and did his job walking the halls of Congress. And when the day ended, he was particularly encouraged about his meeting with your former colleague, Congresswoman Benson. And so it was a productive time, and as we mentioned, probably his last act of a public servant was working for the safety and funding of State Highway 212. Dave was my friend. He was a mentor. He made me a better public servant, a better elected official, a better human being. It was a privilege knowing him and working alongside him. With all my heart, I encourage you to support SF 3766. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members.
Thank you, Commissioner. Senator Dahms.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair and members, and just some final comments here. One of the things that I was always pressed with Mayor Micheal is that he and I are on different sides of the aisle, but you would never know it, because he wanted to work with people to get things done and do what was right for his community and for the state of Minnesota. And I represented that area now since 2012, and he truly became a friend of mine. And he was one that I really relied on, and one that I knew if we had an issue, we could sit down and get it worked out. And I always did appreciate that about David, and he was really highly respected in his community for the things he'd done. I too would like to see this carried forward as a single bill, but that'll be up to the committee. So I would certainly hope that we could pass this out and have this memorial be there forever on the behalf of David and all the work he'd done. And thank you, committee.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to testify on Senate File 3766? Oh, I'm sorry, Senator Lang.
Thank you, Mr.
My
Chair.
apologies.
I have to chime in for just a little bit here, because I had a pretty good relationship with Dave, and it's funny. I would say your last name, but I think you and Dave probably have the two hardest names in all of my district to pronounce correctly. But I actually had the east side of the river just until we redistricted as of lately. So I got to do quite a bit of work with the city of Granite Falls, and I know Marty worked that area quite regularly, actually, and whether it was the dam or some of the issues. Man, we worked on some Minnesota state statute as far as code goes and a bunch of things that, and there was no doubt that Dave did sit across the aisle, and he made that very apparent to me right away. But after that, it didn't matter. After that, it did not matter. It was very nice, and I tell you what, he would text me back immediately if I texted him asking about something, and it was just a true joy to work with, I have to admit, and it was a testament to his area that we're going to do this, and I think it's entirely appropriate. And I guess with that, Mr. Chair, I would like to go ahead and move the bill. I recommend it to pass. I think the bill number is, if we can find it here, 3766, recommended to pass and be moved to general orders.
Thank you, Senator Lang. Before we take a vote on the motion, I'll just open it up to see if anyone else wanted to come forward. See if anyone else on the committee had any comments. I'll just note that I see these wonderful letters of support and memory of Mayor. I've always messed up. Anyways, I just know that he has been a great presence on these issues that this committee cares about. He's been a leader. He's been present. I remember well his leadership. The irony of the paradox of the circumstances of his leaving us. I'm glad you shared that. And I think this is a great tribute. So appreciate the motion. So with that, Senator Lang renews his motion that Senate File Number 3766 be recommended to pass and referred to the floor. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee.
All right. Senator Westlin, hot out of judiciary, just in time to present her bill. Come forward, please. Senator Westlin is here to present Senate File 3798, memorializing the memory of Micheal Gow. Please
Thank you,
proceed.
Mr. Chair, and thank you, members, and thank you so much for the supporters who are here for this bill today. This bill would name this the Micheal Gow Memorial Bridge. It is on Highway 169 and Rockford Road. And Mr. Gow was married for 25 years. He worked for MnDOT for 14 years, but probably as impressive as anything, he served as a 23-year Belle Plaine firefighter and was Firefighter of the Year for 2021. I know that Mr. Gow's death was a terrible tragedy for his coworkers, his family, his friends, and what a lovely way to honor his memory. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Westlin. And we have Tim Nelson from the Department of Transportation. Please introduce yourself and proceed.
Good afternoon, Chair and members. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on this bill. My name is Tim Nelson. I'm a MnDOT employee and have had the privilege of working with Micheal Gow. He was a friend to many and really enjoyed working and learning as much as he could. When I think of Mike, I think of his smile, his stories, his laughter, and willingness to help anyone and everyone. The memory that really stick in my mind are the conversations about his career ambitions, his valuable thoughts on the project, his beloved motorcycle, and of course his family. All that while he was constructing the bridge at Rockford Bridge over 169, and he'll be definitely deeply missed at MnDOT. Michael's wife, Jenny Gow, she could not make it here today, so I have a statement on her behalf that I will read here. So, Mike was a wonderful, passionate, caring man that put his family first and made sure that they knew he would always be there for him. He put his heart and soul into everything he loved, from family, friends, working with MnDOT, serving on the Belle Plaine Fire Department, being president for the Pioneer Power Fire Association. With everything he did, he made people feel like they mattered and took the time to listen. He would do anything for anyone he knew or just met. He had a great love for the outdoors and sports, but most of all, he loved his children and grandchildren. His laughter could be heard for miles, and his hugs felt for days. I have been extremely blessed to call him mine and build the life we shared with him. Thank you guys for listening, and I hope you guys vote on this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson. Members, any questions? Oh, I see we already have the, it pays to know people, huh? That's nice. Anything further, members? Would anyone else like to testify on Senate File 3798? All right. Senator Morrison, would you like to move the bill to the floor?
Mr. Chair, I move that Senate File 3798 be passed and moved to general orders.
All right. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, members. I appreciate it.
All right.
Mr. Chair, welcome to the testifiers table.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I have, what do we have? Senate File 3944, which is the Department of Transportation, one of their agency bills. This is the larger of their bills that has a number of provisions. We call it the technical bill. It's not actually technical. There are some matters of substance in it. And Madam Chair, I will have an amendment to offer the A3, but I don't want to offer it at the outset because it deals with some matters in the bill, and so I'd rather just do a very high level, kind of bullet pointed presentation of the elements of the bill, and then invite my friend, Mr. Rudin, to do a little bit more filling in the lines, then offer the amendment. Then I think there are other amendments as well. So with that, Madam Chair, the bill consists of these elements. The first section would repeal the prohibition that currently exists in law on the expenditure of trunk highway funds, inclusive of the Highway User Tax Distribution Fund, on electric vehicle infrastructure. Sections 2, 3, and 4 have some turnbacks enumerated. Sections 5 and 6 have to do with the subject of contracting preferences for small targeted businesses and veteran-owned businesses, increasing the threshold up to 12% for state-only funded projects. Section 7 has to do with J-turns. I know everyone in this committee loves J-turns. Making a little joke, because I've heard a lot of anxiety about J-turns, but they are shown to really improve traffic safety at high-risk left-hand turns. And so just by way of describing briefly, if folks understand J-turns, you take a right, then go up a little ways, and then do a U-turn if you're wanting to actually go left. So there's no left-hand turn onto a busy roadway. So what most people do is when they make that right, they just swing into that far lane to get situated and positioned up to go down the road that short little distance in which they make the U-turn. And this allows for you to make that wide turn into the far lane rather than into the closest lane, then signaling and signaling again. Sections 8 and 9 remove obsolete references to the term safety zone, which is kind of an old chestnut, not really used that much anymore. Section 10 creates a definition for non-divisible loads and non-divisible vehicles to align with the federal definition. And if you have more questions about what exactly I'm talking about, Mr. Rudin can help you. Section 11 has to do with some annual reporting on metrics that relate to trunk highway performance, resiliency, and sustainability. some of the reporting requirements and elements that would just, some changes that would make it easier for MnDOT to comply with those requirements. Section 12 has to do with safe routes to school eligibility, mostly as relate to those grants when they're made to tribal governments, and also having to do with the uses of the money as relates to infrastructure versus technical assistance. Section 13 are some changes to the disaster support revisions that we made last year. If members recall, we provided some funds to assist MnDOT with disaster and fixing infrastructure that had been damaged by disasters because funds were slow to come from the otherwise set-aside disaster account in state governments. So for reasons that I don't fully understand, but in any case, it seemed to be logical to fund the roadway infrastructure separately because the funds coming out of that other fund just were slow to come over to MnDOT. In any case, some of those funds did come over, so there's some funds that are available that we can extend this year. And then there's a whole separate Article 2, quite lengthy, makes up the bulk of the size of the bill, and it's has to do with updates to the Greater Minnesota Transit Program, of which there are quite a few changes, which I can just discuss very quickly, defining complementary paratransit services, the statutory definition of public transit versus public transportation, definitions of rural transit, rural area service, and small urbanized area service, a lot of things like that. I won't go through all of this. Hopefully you've read the bill in detail and you know exactly what it holds. And then after that, also a lot of paper so a lot of what's happening in this section is moving rules over to statute, codifying those, and also then repealing a lot of those rules that would then become redundant and or are obsolete. So with that, Madam Chair, I'll offer the A3 amendments, which would, why don't I just do a quick walkthrough of the amendment, and then we'll take the amendment. So the first part of the amendment is actually language borrowed from Department of Public Safety agency bill, which adds 2 members to the Traffic Safety Council, the director of the Minnesota Emergency Medical Services Regulatory Board, and a person representing a victims advocacy organization. The next section, which starts on line 2.21, would just simply clarify the funds that we're making to cities through the Transportation Advancement Account. I'll ask Mr. Greenfield, is this just pertaining just to small cities in this section?
Madam Chair, Chair Dibble, this pertains to the larger cities. That was established in last year's transportation omnibus bill.
Just to make sure that they're not just using those funds for anything they see fit. It's intended for transportation purposes, and this makes that clear. Section 9 has to do with what we call the Vikings plates, but I think some of the other professional sports teams have established special license plates, and this just has to do with making sure the money that comes is annually appropriated to where it's supposed to go. And Mr. Greenfield, I empower you to interrupt me if I get anything wrong along the way here. And then afterwards clarify anything that I've missed. The next section, which starts on line 3.2, is just some cleanup language around that J-turn section in the underlying bill. Section 16, starting on 4.1, establishes the Transportation Facilities Capital Program, which is the whole kind of program that's been developed that governs uses of funds that we appropriate, particularly trunk highway funds that we appropriate to the Department of Transportation for their buildings. Something that MMB was asking for after we had allowed for trunk highway funds to be used for this purpose mixed with general funds. They wanted to make sure that that was all done in the right way. Section 17, starting on 5.16, this is just a small little kind of technical cleanup glitchy thing missed when we made Metro Mobility a forecasted service of state government, such that those revenues would be assumed and anticipated, so that because they are a federal requirement, we've had this whole discussion about METMO forecasting. Everyone knows what that's about. We just didn't get the dates quite right. There is some more work that needs to be done, which I can't quite recall, that Met Council called to our attention, so we're going to probably come back and visit this section at some point in the not too distant future. The next section starts on 5.23, and that's just making sure that the funds that we appropriated for the purpose of a culvert, for a pedestrian culvert underpass out in Dakota County that connects two sides of the Mung Farm out there. We just got a couple of things wrong, needed to clarify that. Section 20, starting on 6.2, relates back to the Transportation Facilities Capital Program, a little MMB fix on MnDOT facilities, buildings. The next three are little fix-ups. Is it three or four? Next four items are little fix-ups on some of the earmarks that we made, or excuse me, constituent requests that we accommodated in the bill last year. So some technical cleanup there. The next section, starting on 8.14, is just deleting some musts and shalls and things like that. It's just a cleanup. And then this Article 3 that starts on 8.23 is just more of that cleanup having to do with that Article 2 in the underlying bill. It's a separate article for some reason, but it has to do with all the cleanup on public transportation and et cetera, the Greater Minnesota Transit stuff. All right, and I think that's it. So I'll move the A3 amendment, Madam Chair.
All in favor of the A3 amendment? Senator Jasinski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just one quick question before it. I'm going back and forth. We just got this recently, so I'm trying to talk which comments are on this and which comments are on the overall bill. But before we pass the A3, I just want to get out, there was some changes to the constituent requests on line item starting 6.15. I just want to make sure Mr. Rudin can go on record as saying that the locals approve of these changes, because I know there's some pretty big projects. I know Senator Abler, Senator Kroon, Senator Pratt, Senator Coran had some changes in there. So just to verify that the locals did approve of those changes.
Mr. Rudin.
Madam Chair, Eric Rudin with MnDOT Government Affairs. Yes, we worked with county engineers in all those cases, and the issue that we're trying to address here is that after session ended, MMB determined that trunk highway bonds can only be appropriated directly to the Department of Transportation because there's a clause in the state constitution that talks about trunk highway bonds being used by the department. And so they were not allowing us to sell these bonds to be directly granted to the local governments. So it's still our intention to enter into agreements in some of these cases with the local governments. If they're going to continue to be the project lead, we would just need the funds first to come to MnDOT, and then we will enter into those agreements. But yes, they're supportive of these and anxious to see these changes get made so that they can begin accessing these funds.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And then just one other thing on the A3, and
Senator Jasinski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think what I found is a lot of these changes in the A3 didn't come from MnDOT, they actually came from the House. So just the one concern is, we seem to be putting a lot of bills into one amendment where we could really have hearings on some of these things instead of putting them all into one thing. I understand if it's MnDOT's technical changes, I get that, but it sounds like there's a lot of bills that came from the House that kind of got put into this amendment as part of a technical bill. So obviously I'll vote for it, but I just want to raise those concerns. So thank you, Madam Chair, that was it.
To the A3 amendment, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The A3 is adopted.
Madam Chair, I just wanted to indicate to the committee and Senator Jasinski that we're going to lay this on the table. So we'll have another crack at it, maybe even a couple of cracks at it. So. right. Mr. Rudin might want to expand on my presentation.
Madam
Mr.
Chair.
Rudin.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. Actually, I think Chair Dibble did a great job explaining the legislation, so I can attempt to answer questions. We also have a few subject matter experts here from the department if necessary to bring them up to the table. But also wanted to thank the senator for carrying the bill for us. Some of it is fairly technical, other portions are more substantive, but it's all important for the work of the department.
Thank you. Senator Jasinski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As now as we're on the regular bill, just a couple issues, and I know Senator Newman would not be happy if I didn't bring this up, but one of the items that we're concerned about is the leakages. And in that, I think on item 2.14, where we're taking out the installation, construction, expansion, maintenance of public electric vehicle infrastructure. So we're taking money away from the trunk highway funds. It's really not going towards roads and bridges, it's going towards the infrastructure. I know it's near those areas, but I just, have some concern over that. We worked on leakages for a long time, and this is money kind of coming away from the structure of the highways. And then secondly, Section 12 that clarifies the tribal nations are not required to adopt the regulations for safe routes to schools that other ones are, cities and counties. Just the issues, we're treating different people differently, and that's my only other concern there is we should be consistent with that, and no other issues on my end. But thank you for listening to those concerns.
Chair Dibble, do you have a response?
Thank you. I'll ask Mr. Rudin to perhaps respond to both. I am probably more sympathetic than you think on the EV issue, and on the tribal governments qualifying for safe routes to school funds absent adoption of a plan. As I understand, have to do with sovereignty issues, but I'll let Mr. Rudin expand on both matters.
Mr. Rudin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator Jasinski, yes. We did get an appropriation last year to match federal funds for the installation of electric vehicle charging stations. So there was an appropriation of $13.6 million. That was general funds. But we do feel it's appropriate to at least have the option, if we need it at some point in the future, to access trunk highway funds. These are charging stations that will be located along the trunk highway network. They won't actually be on the trunk highway right away necessarily, but there might be instances 15 years in the future when potentially a charging station is damaged or needs some repair, and if we don't have a funding source to be able to address that, then we wouldn't quite know what to do. There are also other federal grant opportunities. So the $13.6 million was for the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Program, but there are other grant opportunities out there that potentially the department could choose to pursue and then might need to have some matching funds for. So there's no specific plan at this moment to use trunk highway funds for that, but it's something that we would like at least to have as an option. And then on the safe routes to school, yeah, as Chair Dibble mentioned, we feel we can't require a tribe to adopt the ordinance that local governments have to adopt because of sovereignty issues. There's also a secondary piece in there that sort of differentiates infrastructure project funding through safe routes to school versus non-infrastructure. And this change would also allow cities, counties, and townships to access the non-infrastructure portion of that program without first adopting that regulation.
Senator Jasinski.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks for the clarification there. And again, I know Senator Dibble and I agree on the EV stuff, EV items about really working with public-private partnerships. The infrastructure is already there, for example, restrooms and drinks and sodas and food and all those things with our existing businesses in those areas. But I do know it does take a lot of cost to upgrade electricity, power requirements to install some of those things. So I just, again, want to make sure my voice is heard that I want to work with businesses that already have the infrastructure infrastructure there to upgrade those facilities to be able to have those there. So thank you for that.
Madam Chair, if I could
Mr. Rudin.
just have one more item on that. So we did recently issue the RFP for spending those federal NEVI funds, and we received 38 responses to that RFP for the 18 locations that we've identified around the state, and they all are in the vein of that public-private partnership that Senator Jasinski mentioned. So that is our intention for this first round of spending those NEVI funds.
Thank you. Senator Howe.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I guess I'd like to have more discussion, maybe offline, on the eligibility to use that funding without that planning piece, that because that's near and dear to my heart, because I was actually the guy that drove that issue, because I wanted to make sure that the Safe Routes to School was planned for by communities, and then they could put it, but because my problem is towns were putting in infrastructure and subdivisions with no routes to school, with no sidewalks, and then they were coming back and applying for Safe Routes to Schools to get that funding to put the sidewalks and the routes in. And to me, you should be planning that in when you plan your subdivision. And I really believe that if you're going to use taxpayer dollars to do any of that, you should abide by that. And so I've got a little bit of, you're going to have to convince me on that section in 8.3 to 8.6 that is a needed deal. I think that's problematic for me. Thank you.
Chair Dibble or Mr. Rudin.
I'll take a first stab at it. I agree. I don't know where the legalities pick up or leave off, but making sure that those funds are being deployed in a way that have the desired benefit and effect. I mean, Safe Routes to School enjoys really strong bipartisan support. As a matter of fact, I remember, I'm blanking on her name, but former state senator who got up and just lamb-blasted a DFL bonding chair on the Senate floor because there wasn't enough money for Safe Routes to School in the bill. I loved hearing that. And so it enjoys a lot of, there's just a lot of obvious benefits. I mean, it has a larger community benefit in terms of giving people options, but it especially helps young people, of course, making their way through the community from home to school and after-school activities and the like. And we want to be sure that as those grants are made to tribal governments, they're done in a way that really does have the desired program benefits and effects. So maybe there's a way we can get at making those grants in a way to ensure that they're being used for the right purpose. So there's time to work on this, and so let's work on some language together. Mr. Rudin, did you have a response?
Yeah, I would just point out that to get a grant for an infrastructure, so to actually, install sidewalks or trails or that sort of thing, they would still have to adopt that regulation that requires those types of facilities in new subdivisions. So we're just talking about the non-infrastructure grant. So, these tend to be smaller grants that a community can apply for to sort of help them plan and identify needs that exist in their community.
Senator Howe.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And the issue is the second part of that, where you say they're still have to have it for the infrastructure, it takes out the federally recognized tribes, so they wouldn't have to do it. And I believe they're getting public funds. Their children are just as important as our children going to school, and they should. All you have to do is have a plan to make that happen. So I don't understand why they're eliminated from that piece, but we can have that discussion offline.
Mr. Rudin, did you want to add anything? Or?
Yeah, again, I think, from our perspective, it's, we're not convinced that the state can sort of dictate to a tribe that, they have to take certain actions since they're a federal sovereign nation. But
Senator Jasinski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And getting back to my discussion earlier, and I forgot I had the A2 amendment, so as long as I've got it, I'm going to give it a shot here, which actually I would offer the A2 amendment this time.
Senator Jasinski offers the A2 amendment.
And thank you, Madam Chair. What that does is the discussion we had about the chargers would basically eliminate that section. So I know Senator Dibble does have some concerns about it, so whether he wants to vote for this or not, I don't know, but I'm going to give it a shot as long as I had staff prepare it. So I'd ask for your support on the A2, and I ask for a roll call.
Senator Jasinski asked for a roll call. A roll call will be Senator Dibble. Do you have any comments before we take the roll?
Is that in the packets? Does everyone have that in front of them? Oh. All right, okay, right. I have actually had a conversation with my committee because Senator Jasinski gave me the courtesy of giving me a heads up on this earlier, I think earlier today or yesterday, that he was bringing this, and I've been vacillating back and forth because it really gets me on the horns of a dilemma where I am actually not quite as pure as Senator Newman on trunk highway leakage, but I'm pretty close to him. And on the other hand, I really, really support EVs. It's a tough one. I intend to vote yes. I had decided, and I think I indicated to my committee members that I would intend to vote yes. But I respect the perspective of folks who might see this as a eligible and worthy trunk highway fund purpose. I just think it gets right outside of the line that I have in my mind of, I'm fairly expansive in my view, more so than Senator Newman. I believe buildings and state troopers and the like are an eligible trunk highway fund. I can't quite see this as an eligible trunk highway fund. So I tend to agree with my good friend on this matter. So I'm going to vote yes, but everyone can vote how they want.
Members, further discussion before we vote. Okay, the clerk will take the roll.
Chair Dibble?
Yes.
Vice Chair Morrison?
No.
Senator Jasinski?
Aye.
Senator Bolden?
No.
Senator Carlson?
No.
Senator Coleman?
Aye.
Senator Herr?
No.
Senator Howe? Aye. Senator Lang? Aye. Senator McEwen?
No. The roll is 5 ayes and 5 noes, so the amendment is not adopted. Members, further discussion. Chair Dibble.
Madam Chair, I have nothing further. I would, I don't know if we need to move laying the bill, or you probably need to say the bill's on the table, and then the bill will be on the table, and we'll take it up at a future point in time.
So Senate File 3944, as amended, is laid on the table. And with that, I believe we are adjourned.
I'll ask Ms. Ethier to give us a quick update. I'm going to be gone on Monday, but we
Ms.
are going to
Ethier.
have some business. Oh, and then we have tomorrow morning is the joint hearing with the House on reimagining I-94. Ms. Ethier, do you want to project a little bit more into the future, Monday, and then maybe next Wednesday?
All right.
Ms. Ethier.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As Senator Dibble said, tomorrow is the joint hearing with the House Transportation Committee on reimagining I-94. That starts at 8:30 in the basement hearing room in the House Office Building. And looking ahead to next Monday, we will be having informational presentations on agency capital investment requests. As the chair said, he will be away, will be ably presided over by our vice chair. And with that, I believe, Madam Chair.
Senator Jasinski, I believe before we adjourn, has a comment.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I apologize. I forgot, I had to talk to Senator Dibble about this. We passed county transportation sales and use tax last year, and part of that, there was some reporting that was supposed to be done and put in by February 15th. To my understanding, what I got the information is only one county of the suburban counties or the metro counties have put that report in. I believe that was Dakota County, and none of the other metropolitan counties have submitted that, and it is by law on February 15th. So if we could just follow up and find out why those counties are not submitting and let them know that the intent is to be done by February 15th, or if they're just ignoring us or what they're doing. But it was passed last year, so if you could follow up with that, that would be great. Thank you, Senator Dibble. And Madam Chair.
Great.
With that,
A strongly worded letter is in the works.
and with that, we are adjourned.